Hello everybody, and welcome back to the lab. With you tonight, you have Alex, Brandon, and me, Lou Follenkamp. We hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode about who inspired us, and today what we're going to kind of get into. Um, got two different topics. We're going to kind of break this into a two-parter just for the sake of time, um, tonight and then tomorrow. Um, but what we're going to kind of lead off tonight's discussion with is going to be prehab versus rehab. Um, Obviously, a lot of the kids that we've seen over at No Name and also with me over at Novacare Rehabilitation in Piqua, um, is just the importance of kind of being on top of your symptoms just to begin with, if you have any. Um, but the other thing is just before we even get into anything about prehab and rehab, the number one thing that you need to be able to do with your coach, with your PT, your family and friends, communication, right? So if it's bothering you, one of the best things you can do is just talk about it, like being able to relay that to your coach. Because if you're trying to just push through something you think is just going to magically go away, um, you're just walking yourself down a path that's not going to be fun for you. Um, I guess in terms of my experience with like a prehab setting, some of the biggest points of prehab I would say is making sure that you're dialing in particular parts of like volume before you're like about to go underneath the knife for surgery, like a post-op or an ACL tear, for example. Before you're going to have surgery, you want to obviously work into particular aspects of range of motion, strength, etc. And then the after effects of the rehab part of things is just fun because you've already set the groundworks before surgery. You now had surgical trauma, and now you have to work through that again. So I guess before we kind of dive into prehab rehab talk, um, let's go into some things before you even get into that. So let's talk about ways that you can kind of maintain a good training regimen, and then also like if you do kind of come into the unfortunate happenstance of developing an irritation, what you can do before you decide to push that envelope in the wrong way. I mean, we've all been there. All right. I see Trotter shaking his head, and I kind of see Brandon down there. Maybe not so much. Um, but
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has to find out like where their tolerance level is, I guess.
mhm.
Um, and that comes from trial and error as far as that goes. Like you inevitably are going to push it too far and be like, did it too much this day, or did it too, you know, hopefully it's just not a step backwards. But if you don't kind of push that limit, then you don't know where you are. So like the younger that you are, I feel as if like you kind of need to like feel it out for yourself.
Mhm.
But it does help having, you know, guidance from people that have been there, done that too.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm gonna throw this out there. It might not stick, but we're gonna throw it out there. Like when
Go.
if I know that I like have something like coming up, I'm gonna be like talking about like your tolerance and stuff like that. If I know I have something coming up, then I'm not gonna push that threshold because you always want to get your stuff healed as fast as possible. If I
Mhm.
know I got something kind of like it's not, it's still a long ways away, that's when I'm gonna kind of start pushing that threshold of what can I tolerate when I'm dealing with maybe an injury or something like that. It might kind of prolongate the total recovery time a little bit, but I'm still going to be able to get that higher workload that I'm looking for during that healing process. So I think it kind of comes down to like what my competitive schedule is in a sense,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't sound like the smartest idea to do because obviously you want to get healed as fast as you can. But if I can kind of still like build and maintain some type of muscle or capacity, and maybe sacrificing that maybe a couple of days worth of a little bit more irritation than what would originally have, then that's what I've always done.
Mhm.
Might not be the smartest thing, but it's worked out for me in the long run.
Yeah. So like you when you get more into like the prehab type of things, prehab, I always think like the person's either sustained an injury or a minor type of injury. You're trying to basically prepare the body for whatever is needed next. Um, So like if you're talking about like you have like this minor irritation, right? You're talking about like a sprain. I'm sorry, strain, not a ligament, but like a muscle strain, right? So when you actually like hurt the actual musculotendinous unit, um, and that area is not irritated, loading the tissue doesn't feel great. So like obviously it's going to take a few weeks for that area to heal. It's not just going to like magically boom, I feel fantastic. Um, so what happens with that is it does take a formality of time and where you have to go from point A to point B. So like that ain't gonna happen over a span of like 2 or 3 days. You're gonna look at like maybe 1 to 2 weeks if it's like a very minor one. But then you're gonna look at like 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 6 to 10. Like it all depends. There's so many different variables that go into it. There's no like set date. It just depends on how much did you push through that irritation and now you've maybe aggravated it worse. Two, what you're eating and sleeping like, hydration levels like, because those all go back into building blocks of making everything rebuild back stronger, and then reintegrating at a rate that is appropriate for the tissue so that you are kind of honoring its healing rate, but then also still working on the things you need to in the gym so that it's not like piss off 1 2 steps back, 1 step forward, piss off 2 steps back. Like it's like you want to keep making progress forward, but there's going to be exercise modifications. There's going to be things that you can do to kind of maintain a minor irritation and you can let it heal while at the same time making progress. And that's what we've done. Honestly, that's what we've done in the gym. That's what we've done in the clinic. We've pushed the kids to higher levels while also honoring the injuries that they have sustained. So that's my little tidbit on hey, you're gonna be a regular Dr. Doolittle over there, Trotter, with all those
Yep.
animals.
Yep. I'm just letting it happen. I'm trying to figure out how Brandon does it.
Nice.
Just winging it.
Nice. But I guess kind of going into the aspects of prehab, um, I like to think that if the person has sustained an injury, in which case it's going to require surgical intervention, like I've already established before, you're going to be trying to address the areas that you can to the highest efficiency and get as much range of motion back, as much strength back. Maybe it's joint mobility, unless it's like an ACL tear and the joint's kind of unstable to a degree. You're going to make it as stable as possible. So prehab is basically preparing yourself for what is to come following surgical intervention, right? So prehab could be any number of things. Labral tear, where you're going to have to work within the confines of what stability the shoulder allows for. Rotator cuff tear, probably going to be working with what you're capable of regaining strength and motion wise. An ACL tear, you're going to be looking at more of like, what is my quad doing relative to my hamstring? Can I maintain my quad mass before surgery? Um, I mean, I even have a hip labral tear right now. Like they're trying to get back into the gym. And it's like, how can we go about, honoring what's going on motion wise? Like if she goes into like full external rotation during a squat, it's a wicked pinch. It's not comfortable. It's painful. So we've kind of modified both range of motion and then also like where she loads on her. Like if she does a front squat, she's gold. She does a back squat and she actually does like more of like a low bar where she gets more of a hip hinge. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. So we've kind of like modified a lot of her training right now. Um, so prehab, I like to think of as like you're preparing for what's to come. Um, and as soon as you go under the knife, then you go from prehab to rehabilitation, right? So rehab, literally from the get-go, right after surgical intervention, you kind of start off and it's going to suck, right? So like surgical trauma, it's it's exactly what it is. It's trauma, right? So your body's undergoing a type of is undergoing a form of injury again, where I've had people who have had surgery and like, well, I thought my pain was just supposed to magically go away. And it's like, how can you go about educating that person? You just were cut open. They had to go in there, fix what was broken or what was torn or what was detached and had to completely put it back on, right? So what happens with that is that now you've undergone a second form of trauma and the means of we've now fixed everything. Um, but now we have to build back up, right? So one of my favorite things to do, both in prehab and then going into the post-surgical or the rehabilitation portion of things, is what you can do modality wise to kind of help maintain control of symptoms as well as, oh, nice, control of symptoms or maintain muscle mass. Because what do we know about muscle mass, right? It moves the joints, provides stability. Atrophy is one of the worst things that you can go through following an injury, following surgery, ad nauseum. Um, in particular, things that I think need to be addressed. Like I love using blood flow restriction training. I mean, I think that if I have a pre-surgical ACL, meniscus, or rotator cuff tear, I'm going to be using the BFR system in order to basically sustain and stimulate the muscle at a level that maybe I can't do without it. Allows us to maintain basically the muscle mass and girth of the quad, for example, after an ACL. Had one had one kid in particular who actually gained quad size with the VFR, and then after surgery, like did not lose it because we just kept going through that. But is there anything in particular you guys wanted to talk about in terms of prehab and rehab? Because rehab could even just be after injury as well.
That's your world, big guy.
I know, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Oh, and Trotter's got his kitty. She just wants his attention. Cracks me up.
That's literally what it is. She does this with Steph in her meetings too.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. You.
No, this would have been a good one for Dave to kind of chime in on too. Um, I guess you could look at rehabilitation as always following injury or following surgical intervention, right? So like with terms of like rehabilitation, you're trying to regain um, function, right? Motion, strength, joint mobility, movement patterns, coordination, proprioception. Like there's so many different things and aspects to recovery that needs to be addressed following injury. Obviously, if it's not like a post-surgical where like there wasn't actually like full detachment tear or something needed to be required from an external fixation kind of a thing. Um, what caused them to or what led to that injury, right? So we'll in the next episode we'll talk more about like corrective exercise versus just programming modification. And so the big thing to talk about then now would be like how someone was beforehand led to how they got injured, right? So either how they moved, maybe it was a coordination, like a firing pattern. Maybe they weren't strong on one area, so they were compensating in another, which led to the injury. There's I mean there's an infinite amount of variables that could go into this. Maybe they didn't sleep well enough that night before and they went to go do a 1 rep max and then they just weren't all there and they hurt their back. Um, maybe they weren't eating right, so maybe they just been consistently breaking down. So it's like I said, there's a multitude of different variables that kind of go into this. So when we're thinking about rehabilitation, before just addressing like the physical means of like active range of motion and strength, I like to talk to the individual that I'm evaluating and kind of get an idea of like what's their lifestyle like. So like what is your sleeping patterns like? Like even though you've been hurt, like what was your sleeping like beforehand? If you had like an example of what you've been eating for a week, could you show me that? Do you drink water? Like how much, if so, how much water do you think you get? And that's where I think some people kind of you know, miss the mark right out of the gate is we want to sit there and give them every exercise in the book just so that we can get them moving more and get them better. Well, it's like you could throw a million different exercises at someone, but if they don't have those top three building blocks right out of the gate, doesn't matter what I do, they're going to remain irritated. Their healing rate's going to be maybe a little bit less than what it could potentially be, maybe not as efficient. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. That's not the way the body works. It will happen. It just might not happen at the rate we want it to. So there's a plethora of different things that we could kind of dive into, but rehabilitation basically means that we are trying to take the deficits that you have now acquired from this injury and we're going to work on them. And we're going to try to build back to a level. I usually say in PT, I should be the stepping stone because I should be able to take where you are lacking and I should be able to build you up to a point where you're at about 80-85%. And then I like to have a multitude of like many hands make light work, right? So that's why I like having a tribe or a village of like individuals that can work with my patients and take them to new heights and new levels of achievement, right? So like we've done with a lot of the different athletes at Notre Dame Athletics, right? We've taken them from injury, we get them to the point where they're willing to like work back into the gym. We take them into the gym, we modify the program as we need to, and then we eventually put them back on full bore 100%, right? So we've had that with how many different athletes now? Like a ton. Um, it's just one of those things where it takes more than one person to you almost have to like rehash those things because I can tell them till I turn blue in the face about eating, sleeping, and drinking, right? Um, But then when it starts coming from other sources like Brandon or Alex, or maybe it's even the dietitian that's in the mix now, like there's a lot of different things that kind of go into this. Um, any particular things on rehab or prehab you guys wanted to kind of dive in more? Um, so like maybe what were you gonna say, Brandon?
You killed that.
I know it's because I've been rehashing this for like the last 2 weeks with a lot of my patients. There's been a lot of people so far I've had to give that talk to. Um, but it is important. I mean, it has its way. The number one thing I would say though, with kind of getting into, I guess, let's say you did sustain like a small injury, right? So you had a small injury. What can I do now? Okay, well, don't sit there and try to stretch it out like mad. Like obviously you had an injury to an area where you loaded it, it got irritated. Let's say hamstring pull. You pulled it during sprints, or maybe you were doing a heavy RDL, pulled the hamstring, didn't like it, it got pissed off. You felt maybe that little twang. Any bruising and swelling? Not really. Okay, it's probably pretty minor. Um, was there a bolt of lightning with it down into your foot? Maybe we got to talk a little bit more. Uh, just kind of give a general hamstring strain or strain. Yeah, God, my brain right now is crazy. But when you have those types of injuries, right, you're not going to go and try to load up to 75, 85% of your working weight, right? You're going to monitor how your body responds to that load. Obviously, if you're loading to a degree or a percentage that is irritating, don't push through that right now. Let's live to fight another day. I mean, if you got a PR on one day and then you injured yourself, you're not going to go trying to hit that again in the following week. If it's irritated, you go trying to put that same amount of percentage through your body, it's going to be like, nope, and then it's going to aggravate it further. When you get more into the lines of like a week or 2 week after a minor, you can kind of start testing the waters, but still be smart about loading and kind of doing more of a gradual progression. Um, I'm not going to give you like specific percentages because everyone's so drastically different. Some people might only be able to tolerate 45% after an injury, while others might be able to go after 1 to 2 weeks back to 75, no problem. Um, there's a lot of different variables that kind of go into healing rates and what your body can handle. But like a few things like exercise wise that I usually don't like to do after an injury right away is going to be like a lot of stretching, like static cold stretching on an injury. Not fun, not going to be good. Get blood flowing, get that area moving, get it so that it doesn't. I mean, like low cardio, walking on a treadmill, cycling, kind of get the area moving, blood flow there. Don't drag trotter, please. And then you look so tired, man.
Oh, I've been like battling a sickness all week.
He's got the black lung pop.
Mhm.
Good. Not good at all. But no, I mean you want to get the area moving so it's as you start getting blood flow into the area, you can kind of start getting the area to heal a little bit better because blood flow is king. If you can get blood flowing into an area that needs to be under maybe a little bit more demand for healing, always a wonderful thing. I mean, I love doing that with my post-op ACLs. Walk, 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 walk. As soon as you're capable of getting away from the crutches, we're going to be walking, we're going to be cycling, we're going to be getting a lot of blood flow. Aerobic activity for healing can be wonderful when done in moderation and when done appropriately. Um, all right, I'm gonna bring you two into this because I know you guys have both been or have been um, in the shoes of a rehabilitation setting before. What were some of the things that you guys kind of found worked for you when you guys had to go through modifications, or maybe mentally what you guys had to kind of talk yourself through to keep yourself in the mindset of I'm making progress, even though this is a setback, I'm still moving forward.
I'm kind
The
of it is what it is kind of guy. I mean, it's not gonna just magically heal. So you might as well just do the steps you need to do, and eventually you'll get where you need to be.
Makes sense. That's good. What about physically? What have you been doing with your ankle?
My toes,
Kind of working where you need to work.
yeah. Thought it was one issue. It turned out it was another issue. So you just make the adjustments and move on and go.
Little things. Make adjustments. Keep making progress. Moving forward. Good. How about you, Trotter?
I would just say the less serious that you take the rehab, like the longer this injury is just going to be like drawn out.
Hmm.
So you actually have to take it as if like it's, like a training day or what have you there. So I would say that's the most important part. And just find little other goals that you can do, like while at rehab. So then kind of shifts that mindset or at least keeps it the same, like staying on an edge.
It's actually a good way to think about it. So like thinking about like progressing in a way that's going to respect the injury, but also like how many times after an injury do we have kids that want to try to hit old numbers like right away or run
Yeah.
at the same speed right away?
Yeah. I mean, it's just unlikely to happen.
Yeah. That's why it's like sometimes as much as we want to see them go back to 100%, we have to be like I don't want to see the bearer of bad news, but like the governor, like the brake pad. Slow your roll a little bit, you'll get there one day, but like right now we need to be smart about this.
Yeah.
Um, I've had to do a few different talks with some of the kids over the last few weeks, and even some of my older patients, believe it or not, people who you would think would have more patience, don't have patience. So what happens is then they're like trying to do jumping and hopping when they're post-op labor repair, and it's like, what are you doing? We talked about this. This is not a good thing. Too much too soon. Impact, no, no. Um, so no, I've liked that so far. I mean, discussion wise with prehab and rehab, I mean, I think we've covered the basis of what both are. Prehab is basically just a preparation for what's to come, and rehab is basically just taking you from step one after injury all the way back to 100%. Um, so then you can kind of look at it in a few different ways with rehabilitation, or like you're beginning to sustain an injury or an irritation, like something that's just nagging and annoying. Um, what I want to talk about in next week's episode, or 2 weeks from now's episode, um, is is corrective exercise always warranted? Like, okay, I'm getting an irritation. I should just do some corrective exercise to make this less pissed off. Or maybe we need to make some modifications in the programming. So before we kind of close out today's episode, is there anything else you guys want to add on to that?
No,
Yeah,
you nailed
solid.
it.
Sweet. I kind of went full trotter there like you did with the barbells that one day.
That's my bad.
Hey, I enjoyed it. No, but we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode on prehab and rehab. Um, if you guys want to talk about this a little bit more, maybe I'll pick Dave's brain about it too on one episode. We can kind of continue that discussion, go down that rabbit hole even further. Um, Maybe talk about like what exercises or types of exercise. I know I talked about like loading too quickly, but like I'm not going to be going to use like heavy eccentric stuff like that. So maybe I'll save that for when Dave and I record next. But we hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode. We will see you guys next time.